Japanese.
In 2011, Boo wasn't even called Boo yet. We had recorded just one song together, a cover of He Hit Me and It Felt Like a Kiss. Chris had a few old demos kicking around and shared some of these with me. They had all been composed with various soft synths in making waves on his clunky old laptop. One in particular immediately transported me. It was called Diagram of a Human Eye, after a poster he'd seen on the Northern Line for some London museum. Just a placeholder title. Listening to the dusty blooping arpeggio and skittering percussion cantering over those warm chords, it spirited me away into two parallel tales. One of a young woman on the cusp of adulthood, about to venture into the wider world, but also of the Empire of Japan at the turn of the last century, once cloistered but suddenly facing inevitable intrusion from Western culture. This song taps into my deep love of Japan through history, poetry, and legend. To tell the story of this song, I have to share some of Japan's history with you. 16th century Japan was gripped by civil war. The old hierarchy of power was torn apart when the shogun, appointed by the emperor and based in Kyoto, lost influence over the daimyo, or local lords, and they began fighting between each other for control over Japan. At this time, Japan was very active at sea. The daimyo used piracy and free trade to consolidate arms and power, while battle-worn ronin and exiled Christians sought new lives abroad, even founding Nihonmachi, or Japan towns, in other countries. This all changed once Tokugawa Ieyasu reunified Japan under a single shogun rule. After his historic victory at the Battle of Sekigahara in 1600, he established a new capital in Edo, now Tokyo, marking the beginning of a 200-year period of peace and prosperity for Japan. To help maintain his power, Tokugawa introduced a foreign policy known as sakoku, which translates as locked country. Sakoku was a series of policies that essentially cut off contact between Japan and the rest of the world. No Japanese ship, nor any native of Japan, shall presume to go out of the country. Whoever acts contrary to this shall die, and the ship with the crew and goods aboard shall be sequestered until further orders. All persons who return from abroad shall be put to death. Sakoku had many benefits for Tokugawa. It restricted the ability of the daimyo to trade, which ensured they would never become powerful enough to challenge the shogunate. It hindered the destabilizing spread of Christianity and colonialism from the Spanish and Portuguese. And lastly, it enabled him to control commerce between Japan and other nations, collecting taxes and levies on the limited trade it did make with the Dutch and neighbours Korea and China. So, for over 200 years, visitors to Japan were generally either turned away or executed, while its own culture flourished in peace. This lasted until 1853, when US Commodore Matthew Perry sailed his kurofune, or black ships, into Edo Bay. These 4 heavily armed steamships made an intimidating display of Western technological advancements and naval power. Calling himself an admiral, Perry refused to obey Japanese orders to leave, and sent word that if Japan did not accept delivery of his letter from the president via an envoy, he would deliver it by force if necessary. Japan had no choice but to accept his letter. Within 15 years, what became known as the unequal trade agreements were made with the US and other countries, forcing an end to sakoku and to the Edo period, with the eventual restoration of the emperor, Meiji. To me, this tale of Japan hiding from the rest of the world to nourish itself and develop echoed the quiet preparation of a girl alone in the country, growing into adulthood, becoming ready to explore the world. Once the knowledge of that wider world is uncovered, there is no going back. With all this swirling around in my head, the lyrics for the song came to me quickly. I wanted to include some Japanese lyrics at the beginning, something of the girl's thoughts drifting around. I knew basic Japanese, but I couldn't say much more than, "How are you?" So I searched for something appropriate and discovered Rin Ishigaki's poem, Plucking Flowers.
東京丸の内で摘み草をした。
昭和は10年代の初め、私は10歳代の中頃。銀行へ通う出勤の道すがら、袴の裾を翻し、歩道の脇をちょっと駆け上ると原っぱが開けた。クローバー、タンポポ、ハルジョーン。職場の机に飾るには貧弱すぎる野の花だった。あれからおよそ半世紀、ビルディングが戦火で燃え上がる日もあったが、戦後の東京駅周辺は経済成長の伸びをグラフにしたような新しい高層建築群である。私は定年退職したけれど、小学校での少女を受け入れる会社はもうないだろう。女性も市場価値が問われ、襟分けられる。ついに野の花ではありえない日を迎えて、競い咲く。さようなら丸の内、今はどこにもない原っぱ。かって握りしめた細く青い花茎。あれは私自身の首でした。
This poem perfectly encapsulates all the promise of the future before the destruction of war and disillusionment of adulthood. I didn't want to focus too much on the latter part of the poem. For me, this song was all about that feeling of a liberating and untold future about to begin after being isolated and locked away in childhood for so long. She yearns for freedom, and in her mind she's already gone. The final piece of this song is a reference to a favourite childhood book of mine, The Legend of Urashima Taro. It's a myth about a man who rescues a sea turtle from some cruel children who are toying with it. The turtle takes him to an underwater palace where he is entertained by Princess Otohime. After spending what he thinks has been just a few days there enjoying the wonders of the palace, he tells the princess he must get back home to care for his elderly mother. The princess doesn't want him to leave, but she lets him go, giving him an ornate box to protect him, telling him he must never open it. When he returns to his village, he discovers that over 100 years have passed and all he knew is gone. In his desolation, he opens the box and is flooded with all the experiences of his magical visit to the palace. The taste of peaches, the colourful dancing fish, the exquisite rooms of the palace. And as the memories ripple through him, he ages all those years that have passed until he perishes into dust. The lyrics, "If you look back, you'll forget what you said," are a direct reference to that tale, and to not looking back once a decision has been made, because it could corrupt your resolve, or even destroy you completely. A song can be like that box that Otohime gave to Taro. It can unlock a complete sensory experience connected to a lifetime of history and memory. Great songs do this, even when you don't know what they're about. You can feel its riches unfold through you like magic. Sparrow Dance was the first Boo song I remember experiencing that with, and it still does this to me today.